Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. My top 10 players for this Oklahoma Sooners program heading into 2024 and kind of taking on this process of stacking my favorite 10 players for this Oklahoma team. You really start to realize what we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks and months, and that is this Oklahoma roster heading into 2024. This is by far the best roster that Brent Venables has had since he's gotten into Norman, and you really start to appreciate the depth on this Oklahoma team. I mean, there were 25 names that I have in my notebook that, I couldn't fit all of them onto this list. We're only doing 10 players, guys that I left out that, could be top 10 players potentially, even top 5 players in this situation. Guys like PJ Adebawore, guys like Peyton Bowen, Andrell Anthony. These are some players that didn't even make my top 10 list, but certainly could be top 5 players on this Oklahoma program when we check back in on this list in the middle of October. I'm fired up to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys, to the Oklahoma fans. Y'all know we love talking this program on the recruiting trail, in the transfer portal. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the fellas, it truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, I continue to learn from you guys. Let it fly in the comment section. I know not everybody is going to agree with this list. Drop your top 10 in the comment section. We'll chop it up, talk about some players that I might be sleeping on. Again, I learn from you guys in the comment section. I love talking ball with you guys in the comment section. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with, if you're a longtime listener, you've been listening for the last couple of months, you know this is one of my guys, and that is Dejon Terry. And you look at the numbers from last year, 18 tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, 1 sack. The value that Dejon Terry brings to this Oklahoma team goes far beyond what he does in terms of filling up the box score. You talk about why guys like Danny Stutzman has had so much success in this Oklahoma defense. It really does start with having hammers on the inside of that defensive line. And a guy like Dejon Terry, when you talk about winning at the point of attack, taking on double teams, he does the dirty work. And again, that doesn't always show itself in the box score, but when you watch this Oklahoma defense, playing to the best of their ability, it starts with Dejon Terry controlling the line of scrimmage, keeping his linebackers clean. You take a look at what he does in the run game. 10 run stops, an average depth of tackle of 0.9 yards down the field. This is one of those guys that I think flies under the radar for this Oklahoma roster. You talk about running the football on Dejon Terry, Dominic Williams on the inside. It's going to be tough sledding for a lot of programs, including those programs in the SEC. Going to my number 9 player, and that's going to be Kaden Ward, coming from Miami of Ohio. Now, I'll be the first one to admit, when Kaden Ward hit the transfer portal, I'll raise my hand and say, wasn't too familiar with Kaden Ward. I don't watch a ton of Miami of Ohio on Saturday afternoons, but when he did commit to Oklahoma, we broke down some of the tape. This is a player that not only dominated the MAC level in 2023, but you look at him and say, he looks a little bit different at that MAC level. You kind of know that he has the physical traits to jump up to the SEC level and be a difference maker for this Oklahoma team. Take a look at the numbers last year. Extremely disruptive as a pass rusher, right? Not only 9.5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 43 quarterback hurries, a pass rush win rate of 15%. I think Kaden Ward is a guy that, yes, he can stop the run, but he has a ton of length. He's got a lot of power in his hands, a lot of different ways that he can attack offensive tackles in that pass rush. I'm really high on Kaden Ward heading into the 2024 season. Going into my number 8 player, that's going to be quarterback Jackson Arnold. Now, there is some projection to be had, right? He only threw for 563 yards as a true freshman for Oklahoma. The Oklahoma fans that have been listening to the boys for a very long time know that Jackson Arnold has really been my guy since he's been coming out of high school. And take a look at Jackson Arnold. You go back to the bowl game performance where you saw him be the starting quarterback. Yes, there were some times where he looked like a true freshman. There were also plenty of times during that game where Jackson Arnold really showed why he can take this Oklahoma offense up another level, right? The amount of throws that he can make, the amount of throws that if you're an offensive play caller, you can ask Jackson Arnold to make, it's just a little bit higher than a guy like Dillon Gabriel, 10.1 yards of average depth of target. And again, at times, Did he look like a true freshman against Arizona? Yes, he certainly did. I think you noticed that Oklahoma offensive line really wasn't doing their job. Obviously, some wide receivers dropped some balls in some key moments. Jackson Arnold flashed what we all know he's capable of. And I think in 2024, it really starts with him kind of smoothing the ship and kind of having those flashes be the consistency and kind of the mitigating some of those true freshman mistakes that you saw Jackson Arnold make. But the ceiling on this kid is just exceptionally high. He's a phenomenal athlete when he's asked to break the pocket, create by himself. He can throw on the run. I think it comes down to this kid has all the arm talent in the world. I think he's wired the right way. I think Jackson Arnold is going to have a phenomenal season for the Oklahoma Sooners. Number 7, and it's going to go to Nick Anderson at the wide receiver spot. And what I love about Nick Anderson, 38 catches for 798 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's an animal in the red zone. Very, very big body target, 21 yards per catch. And that's something that I really want to emphasize, right? You look at the most important metrics of having a good offense at the college football level, it is predicated on hitting explosive plays. There's not many wide receivers that can work vertically down the field like Nick Anderson can. I think for Oklahoma fans, what you're most excited about is you saw the flashes from Nick Anderson. He caught for almost 800 yards last year. I think there's still so much meat left on the bone. I think there's a very good chance he's a top 5 player for this Oklahoma team in 2024, but I am a massive fan of Nick Anderson. You have a quarterback that has a bigger arm that can push the ball down the field more effectively than Dillon Gabriel. I think you're looking at a very exciting connection between Dillon Gabriel and Nick Anderson. 16.4 yards averaged at the target. They want him to work vertically. Phenomenal body control for the 6'4" frame that he has. Big fan of Nick Anderson. Number 7, on my list. Going into number 6, and I'm going to go with the TCU transfer, Dominic Williams. Very similar conversation we had with Dejon Terry. 33 tackles, 5 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks. In the 2023 season, you saw a lot of LSU fans, you saw a lot of USC fans maybe say, well, Dominic Williams isn't that productive. I think the Oklahoma fans certainly know Brent Venables is not bringing in Dominic Williams to be this guy that's going for 15 tackles for a loss, 15 sacks in a season. They're bringing him in to control the line of scrimmage, eat up those double teams, let those linebackers play free and downhill. And you look at Dejon Terry, Dominic Williams on those 1st and 10 plays. If you want to run between the tackles for SEC programs, it is going to be extremely tough sledding with those 2 guys in the middle. I think Dominic Williams, again, just a lot better than what the box score says for a guy like Dominic Williams. Going into my top 5, and we're going to go with the running back, Gavin Sawchuk, who Gavin Sawchuk, when healthy, I think can be such a dynamic player. This is a guy that has a 10-700 meter from the high school ranks, 6.2 yards per carry last year. You saw a healthy Gavin Sawchuk. I think you saw a very explosive Oklahoma rushing attack. And that was something that many of the Oklahoma fans know. I was a massive fan of Tawee Walker in terms of how physical he ran the football, thick lower half, bounced off contact. What you lacked with Tawee Walker was, hitting those explosive plays, hitting those chunk plays in the rushing attack. Tawee Walker, phenomenal between the tackles, didn't really have that extra gear to kind of hit those difference-making plays. You look at a guy in Gavin Sawchuk, he has that ability, but I also think going into year 3, you saw it to the back end of year 2. This is a guy that can deal with the physicality at the Power 5 level. Combine that with the juice that he has when he gets to the second level. I think you're looking at a running back that can go for 1,000 yards in the SEC in 2024. Going into number 4, this is where it really gets tricky. I went with Ethan Downs, and this is a player that I think flew right under the radar in 2023. He had a phenomenal 2022 season. I don't think he took the step that a lot of people were projecting him to take in that 2023 year. You go back and watch some of the film. You go back and look at the numbers. He still led the team in quarterback hurries last year, 22 quarterback hurries. He's very solid in the run game. This is a guy that has been extremely productive for Oklahoma. He's good in the run game with the heavy hands, block shedding. I think Ethan Downs is one of those guys that if you can, and I'm not even going to say he regressed. I just think the numbers didn't show that he was dominating like he did in 2022. This was still a very good football player for the Oklahoma Sooners in 2023. If he can take that step in 2024, you're looking at a very, very good edge rusher for the Oklahoma Sooners going into the top 3. And we're going to start with Billy Bowman Jr., and it starts with the 6 interceptions. You talk about playing winning football, turnovers, game-changing kind of plays. Billy Bowman Jr., his instincts in the back end, his ability to you go back to the Texas game, you go back to multiple points, that BYU game where Oklahoma needed a play to win you a football game. It always seemed like Billy Bowman Jr. was one of those guys that was making those plays for the Oklahoma Sooners. He's extremely versatile as well. He's a guy that when you ask him to play that free safety role, keep his eyes on the quarterback, go make plays on the football, he certainly can do that. He can come up in the box and be that extra run defender with the physicality he plays at the point of attack, and he can hold up in man coverage. There is really nothing that you can ask Billy Bowman Jr. to do that he can't. And I think that's massive when you talk about playing different kind of teams week in, week out, especially in the SEC. He can hold up in man coverage. He can make those game-changing plays, and he can be a guy in the run game that you can really rely on to be a physical box safety as well. I am a massive fan of Billy Bowman Jr., and I think what I'd add on to that is with the addition of Zach Alley, asking a lot of these safeties, putting them in spots where they can even more impact the game. I think you're going to see a massive season from a guy like Billy Bowman Jr. And quite frankly, Peyton Bowen, you can kind of slot right into that category. This is a guy in Peyton Bowen that we might be talking about Peyton Bowen being a top 5 player for the Oklahoma Sooners, going up to number 2. And we're going to go to a transfer in Deion Burks from Purdue. And I think Deion Burks is going to be the leading receiver for Oklahoma. I think he's going to lead this team in targets. I think you saw the connection with him and Jackson Arnold during the spring game. What I love most about Deion Burks is he can kind of get involved in the offense in so many different ways. He is a yards after the catch guy, 18 missed tackles forced. He has almost a running back build. He can take on contact. He can operate after the catch, but this is also a guy that can work vertically down the field, can create separation in his route trees. You take a look at the season at Purdue last year, he had 95 targets. That was more than double any other wide receiver on Purdue. And what does that tell you if you're an Oklahoma fan? Deion Burks was the guy at Purdue, right? If something good was happening for that offense, it normally had to do with Deion Burks having the football in his hands. I still think he's going to be the guy in this Oklahoma wide receiver room, but you also have guys like Nick Anderson, like Andrel Anthony, like a guy, plenty of other guys, Farouk. You could talk about Jaquez Petaway, a guy that we think is going to break out in 2024. I look at Deion Burks and say they're going to use him maybe a little bit like Drake Stoops, but quite frankly, I think the ceiling might just be a little bit higher in terms of what Deion Burks can do from an athletic standpoint, from a juice standpoint as a wide receiver. And then going to my number 1 player on this Oklahoma roster, that is really the heart and soul of this Oklahoma Sooners program, Danny Stutzman. I think he is right now my top linebacker in the country heading into 2024, arguably was the best linebacker in the country in 2023. The numbers kind of speak for itself. 104 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 37 run stops with an average depth of tackle of 1.7 yards down the field. And we talked about Dejon Terry, you add Dominic Williams. Danny Stutzman is going to have a lot of opportunity to play clean, to play downhill. You see that average depth of target for a linebacker inside of 2 yards. That's telling you Oklahoma is winning at the line of scrimmage, having their linebackers fire downhill. It's kind of hard to believe that Danny Stutzman was only a third-year kid last year. Could have certainly gone to the NFL draft. He's coming back for one more year. You're looking at not only the intangibles, being the heart and soul of this Oklahoma defense, but also just being one of the best players in college football. Heading into 2024, Danny Stutzman, my number 1 player on this team again. I left so many guys out that I wanted to include. Andrel Anthony, a guy that if he gets healthy back from that injury is going to be extremely productive. PJ Adebawore, Peyton Bowen. You could even add a guy like David Stone as a true freshman. There are so many names that you could add to this list for the Sooners. Those are my top 10. Would love to hear your top 10 in the comments section. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.